Look, just check my new letterbox. I have to buy myself a little padlock for it because the design doesn't have a lock included in it, which I think is a bit slack of the body corporate, but I guess I'm not on the committee, so I can't have any say in that at the moment. But I've also got my first lot of junk mail again, because of course my junk mail sticker was affixed to the old letterbox unit, which has been trashed, so unexpected consequences. And of course disappointing on the Boca Chica front in southern Texas, where Elon Musk has his new Starship operation moving into top gear. Into top gear in certain ways. There's a lot of construction happening there, but there's not much happening as far as rocketry is concerned. There's no hops and there's no flights, and it's getting rather frustrating. And yet again, there's been another cancellation of the road closures, which is a sign of there's going to be some activity. So it's been delayed yet again. It makes me wonder whether now SpaceX is turning into a spaceship model making company rather than an actual spaceships. Maybe that's the new corporate transition. They're not going to bother with actually having flight worthy vehicles in the future. They're just going to basically build huge mock-ups, because it's been so long since there's been a rocket fired around Boca Chica. It is worrying, very worrying. And what's strange is that we haven't heard a word from Elon Musk, who's normally quite good in communications. So he hasn't explained why this incredible conservatism. It's almost as if someone like Jeff Bezos has wormed his way into the operation and has brought his philosophy on spaceship development, which is as slow as possible. That seems to be the way Bezos operates. He has no urgency whatsoever, whereas Musk was very, very much focused on trying to make human beings a multi-planet species. So to do that, he needed to develop the Starship. But it doesn't seem to be any urgency at the moment. It's quite a pleasant Saturday morning, but again held up by quite a large flow of traffic getting across the pedestrian crossing. So there's plenty of people out and about in Cairns. Just going to go to the supermarket. I was indoors for a couple of days, feeling a bit nauseous, and I wasn't even watching mainstream TV. That would normally make me feel pretty crook, but no, I avoided that. I did watch a quarter of the football yesterday when my team was fairly competitive, but they fell in a heap after that, and I was watching other stuff anyways. I switched to the memory stick, so which is what I usually use on the new TV. So yeah, I'm a control freak. I like to be totally in control, compared to being broadcast TV where they tell you what you're going to watch and when you're going to watch it. I love the fact that I can pick and choose when and where I watch my entertainment. So, and of course I avoid the scourge of advertising, because I find that really annoying. Nothing worse than watching a movie that's totally hacked to pieces by ads. The worst place I noticed that actually was in the States, when I went to LA in '87 looking for a writer's agent. We were of course living there with a couple of friends for about 8 weeks, and you just couldn't watch a movie on broadcast TV. It was just so much advertising, and 90% of the advertising was for fast food. It's quite extraordinary. It was a bit of an eye-opener. Things have changed quite a bit. Of course, this is pre-internet, so when you travelled overseas, it felt more like a big experience, I guess, because you didn't have the same global connection you have these days. It's a totally different experience travelling now. Unless you're going to an incredibly isolated spot that has no communication, it's not that big a deal. It's different, but unfortunately those differences are evaporating as time goes by. Although the COVID thing has sort of been interesting in that respect, that it's actually put a stopper on things. So actually speaking of COVID, I actually just checked out a site called the Pole Blood Joke, which has been around for years, and it's just basically looking at all different opinion polls throughout Australia. I was just curious to see how the state governments are holding up with their response to the COVID-19 outbreak, and apparently Daniel Andrews is still more popular than unpopular, which well, it depends which poll we're talking about, of course. You don't just take it as godsend, because there's a number of polls that I've seen that he actually is below 50% on one poll that I've seen, but this one that's quoted on this site is actually in favour. It's like about 58% favour. I wonder about Victorians. Are they just total masochists? I mean, again, I'm assuming that the poll's right, so, but if it was, yeah, I'd be wondering what the hell's their mental state when they think he's doing a good job. Doesn't he take any responsibility for what's happened there? Apparently not. Modern politics, very strange beast. And of course there is talk that we might have a border closure between New South Wales and Queensland. It'd be a real pain in the arse for people living down there, even down in the Gold Coast, because, you know, some of them just commute across all the time. I don't know why they can't, like I said before, why can't they just form a bubble in that area so that businesses can still operate okay? I don't know. Got to be a bit more flexibility. But there was some guy on Sky who was being interviewed, some commentator, and he was blaming the Victorians for all the for not following the laws about self-isolation. And I'm thinking, well, why would they? Because the government's been so hypocritical about it, allowing huge Black Lives Matter protests to take place during a time when there's supposed to be a lockdown. The hypocrisy is astounding. So why would people believe what the government says? That's why I don't know why Daniel Andrews is... God, it's a terrible corner, this. I don't know why Daniel Andrews is so popular. People are generally not that political, I guess. You're just trying to make a living. I guess there's a lot of pressure on everybody at the moment. Scott Morrison put a posting on Sky where he said that he basically was talking about how wonderful it is we're got all this iron ore trade with China, and how it's holding up well and we'll be fine. Like he's clueless to the fact that China is actually turning into be quite a belligerent country who doesn't have our best interests at stake, and yet we're supplying them happily with a strategic resource, a resource that can be used to build weaponry. He just doesn't seem to get it. Although they are doing pretty well, the Liberal National Party, but I still think they're lacking vision and a long-term focus for the country. But again, the alternative is so unpalatable. It's not hard to be ahead in the opinion polls, given that there really isn't much of an alternative. So he's got a pretty easy run at the moment. I wanted to get myself premium biscuits. They're not selling the premium brand anymore. They're looks as though they might have withdrawn it from their stocks, which is really annoying because they're perfectly designed for FNQ, because they're in individual sachets, so they don't get the moisture. You don't get the whole pack being adulterated by the moisture in the air when you open up an individual sachet. So it makes sense to be selling premium biscuits here, but maybe Nabisco's pulled out of Australia, I don't know. So that was a bit of a blow, but that seems to be the norm when I go to Coles. There's usually something missing, but that may be a permanent omission, which is a bit of a worry. The other thing I bought was a bottle of Spanish red, and what's interesting about that is it's in a screw top. Now, I was in Spain about this time last year, and you just could not get screw top vino. So what they've probably done is they've probably had a bulk amount of this red wine, and they've decanted it into Australian bottles, because there's no way that would have been done over there. So yeah, you should see what it tastes like. Actually, to be fair to SpaceX, they did have a very successful mission on their Falcon 9 rocket earlier this week, Very successful in that not only did they recover the main booster, which is pretty much standard now for them, it was the same booster they used to take the astronauts up into the ISS, their first manned space mission, so that was a big deal. So that was a second use for that particular booster. But what was even more amazing or positive was that they actually were able to capture both of the fairings. And fairings are used to protect the cargo in the nose cone before it goes into outer space. So they were sending up a satellite, and the satellite was sitting within these fairings, which sort of break up into two, like, you know, a bit like an egg, you know, sort of into two separate bits, and then they float back to the Earth. And they've got specially equipped ships in the Atlantic that have huge nets above them that actually capture the fairings and prevent them from being going into the seawater, which obviously affects the quality of the for reuse. So they'd rather catch them before they get into the salt water, and they were able to do it with both of them this time. It's the first time. In the past they've caught one out of two, but this time they got 100%, so congratulations, well done. And they're worth a few $1 million each, so definitely worth the expense of going to recover them. And but it is literally trying to get a needle in a haystack, I guess, you know, on the rough seas, and you've got a net to, you know, not a particularly large net. It might be large compared to a person, but when you compare it to the Atlantic Ocean, it's tiny. But they were able to snare both of them, so that was well done, good feat. Now we can only hope that Boca Chica actually does spring into action, and that SpaceX doesn't become a space model producing company. Fingers crossed. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you, or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.